Hey guys, George Mesa, Third Eye Edify podcast. And boy, am I glad to be sitting right here talking into this camera right now. It's been too long. It's felt wrong. It's felt like I've been missing things. And to those who continue to support, thank you so much. You know who you are. It means the world to me. Plenty more to come, I assure you. Not empty promises, interviews, surprises, and some very interesting topics that will be edifying at the very least. And maybe I'll mention something at the end of this episode that would be much better suited for the end because I don't want to waste time here. I want to get right into it because this whole thing is fresh in my mind. The topic may be not obvious as far as the way the thumbnail named it and the images, but this all started for me months ago, this episode. I had been meaning to do this episode for months. And then this unbelievable, possibly the most important documentary in a very long time comes out called Old World Order, which is absolutely must-see TV. I think I've already said this. And believe me when I tell you that it was no coincidence to me personally that some of this was mentioned in it, very close to the end, by the way, in case you were interested in finding where it is in the documentary. But just watch the whole thing, please. Stop what you're doing right now and go watch it. It's really, it's an important thing that I hope as many people as possible can see. Absolutely unsolicited message. Almost none of them know who I am, and I know people that know them, but I don't know any of them personally, so believe me, I just think you should watch it. Anyway, let's just begin by asking a question, as I often have in the past. Over 2 years now. Wow. How do you actually erase history? How is it possible? All the non-believers out there, all the people that think that it's not World War U, the title of my new book. Sorry, just making extra notes as I do this, because this topic just keeps changing as I look up more stuff. It's incredible. How do you not only erase history, but how do you prep enough information to actually reset it for generations, for continents, for entire cultures? How is it even possible? I may ask this question as well. How do you steal the entire wealth of an entire country? How do you break the will of an entire fully functioning country? Well, the short answer might be something along the lines of war. Obviously, war can break anything. And perhaps the results of war open things up for the powers that never were to implement plans that take hundreds of years, because these things don't happen overnight. So I ask again, how do you actually erase history? What if you are able to create situations throughout the entire realm, black, white, red, brown, yellow, whatever, human, all humans? What if you never find out about your own heritage? What if you never even meet your own parents? What if you never meet your own parents who can now tell you about what your grandparents did, how your grandparents met, how their parents met, how all your grandparents met, how the great grandparents met, maybe even live in the same house all together? How do you lose what is supposed to be passed down to you? It's your birthright. Your lineage is your birthright. The knowledge of your ancestors, your direct ancestors, them passing down what they do, what they've learned, give it to you so you can keep going from there and not restart your entire life with nothing, from nothing, with no knowledge of your own past. Rockefeller can be a very easy flavor of the week to pick for the problem here. They implement Department of Education. They teach entire generations how to be slaves to the system, taxed, overworked, underpaid, confused, not able to see their kids if they have any, now convinced they don't need any. And perhaps, maybe it's easier. Maybe it's easier to not have kids. Go ahead, live your life. No one is finding their higher purpose. How do you do it? Well, here's how I got to this question. First and foremost is I was thinking a lot about Cabbage Patch Kids. I know that seems ridiculous, but there's actually quite a lot of images that they produced where these kids are being treated as, real kids. And that's the point. You sell the product. It's appealing to children. Children like to parent. They see us doing it and they want to do it. This is the point of growing up with your parents. You learn what they do. You figure out the world through them. That's the point. Hopefully not through some crappy top 50 pop song that has no perspective on the world whatsoever. These little children's heads, these dolls, they're growing out of the ground like cabbage. They're actually making babies here. Made to order. Money back guarantee? Probably not. I cannot help but think about this. It's gruesome. It's ridiculous. I saw it when I was very young. And motel hell with them growing people's heads in the backyard or using people's heads to grow stuff. Couldn't help it. Sorry about the reference there, if you know it or not. Nothing I suggest watching. It's really a comedy. It's not actually a serious horror movie. From what I remember, anyway. Cabbage Patch Kids got this whole thing going for me. And don't think for 1 second, by the way, that they didn't run that little NASA route. Oh, look at that. Out in the middle of nowhere. Well, I'll buy that one. Oh, wait. You can't buy them. You couldn't buy Cabbage Patch Kids at first. Maybe once Coleco and Fisher-Price bought them, then you could buy them. But the people who were making these originally, and there was a big dispute. I'm not here to get into all that right now. I actually have it written down, but it's not important for the conversation. My mindset on what this episode needs to be has completely changed since I started researching it, which happens enough when I do my thing here. But actually, this time around, I have a completely different mindset on what I was planning on doing. So, originally, there was something called Little People. And then this guy, Xavier, that name, of course, I didn't write down. They were kind of disputing over who created the idea. Typical, the usual. Somebody made it. Somebody else is doing it suddenly out of nowhere. And unfortunately, it seems like the secondary person got to win in the end and got to sell it to the big companies. But they were not for sale. You could adopt them for a certain price. And some of them are already getting expensive before people were buying them to sell them on the black market for who knows what. And you know what the value of some of these are. If you have a vintage one that's really original in the box. So, strangely enough, it almost makes me think, rather than showing a kid, hey, you can parent, Now they're already starting you with like, you can buy kids. You can adopt them. You don't even have to have your own. It's already taking a level down from the importance of actually having a family, actually having a child yourself, if you can. There are unfortunate circumstances where you cannot. An adoption for a child who was abandoned at birth or worse, obviously saving lives and benefiting all parties involved. There's no bad talk about anything like that here, and I'm sure my viewers know this. But I have to say it in case I have some new people watching that aren't sure what I'm all about. But downing other people for anything I'm not sure about or haven't experienced myself is not how I like to roll here at Third Eye Edify. So where does this all go? We're adopting kids. We're not having our own. We're showing kids this. Suddenly it's $1 billion industry. Let's backtrack a little bit. Let's backtrack to a time where you could actually buy a baby of many different races, where potentially we were convinced to get rid of babies too soon. With a grand purpose? We'll get there. Let's see where we go with this. This is Martin Cooney, Couney. Here he is seen holding a premature baby, which were very often clothed with baby toy clothing and young children's baby toys, because there wasn't a market for premature baby clothing that could actually fit these tiny little babies. Because when you're born premature, you are much smaller. So here he is seen holding a baby. Now, he was working at Coney Island, and there was a lot of controversy there because it was near the peep shows and some dirty animals. So the dispute was, hey, you're doing a great service, but can you not do it around these sleazy things and dirty animals? Because there's families showing up here. I assume he did whatever he possibly could. The facility he was running apparently cost about $75,000 back then. This was not a doctor. So he was clearly looking to just do the good work and save children. Now, this could go one of several ways, but I'm starting to see it in a very particular light here, in a very Third Eye Edify kind of light. What ends up happening is there's an air filtration system that you're seeing here. This and many other styles of incubators were holding children. Now, these were essentially orphans. I mean, they were orphans. They were void of parents. But why? Why indeed? Here is Martin Cooney seen again with two clearly, as you can see, very, very, very young premature babies, and a illustration of what his incubator should do and should look like. Now, why are these living, and I say it with that exact word on purpose, if you look at some of the ways that they used to advertise this, look, with living infants, come see infant incubators. Now, this man, Martin Cooney, received no money for what he was doing. He used the entrance fee. This is what's documented. He used the entrance fee to pay for what it cost to keep these babies alive as premature babies in these incubators. These incubators, I don't know 100%, and my wife is not around for me to ask right now, and I should have asked her earlier. Incubators are essentially acting as a makeshift metal womb of sorts. Nothing like that. Not delivering direct nutrition of any kind. And it's not water. It's not made of human anything. It's just a place where they can at least have the correct, nice filtered air and warmth of course. So I'm just going to scroll through a few pictures as I discuss the rest of this here. This was apparently a very common thing. Some of these images are going back before Cooney's time, as he was doing his thing in Coney Island, early 20th century, close to or even during the Depression. But this was going on at all the world's fairs. The world's fairs were absolutely a humongous reset for what is going on in our current time. All of the old world architecture was being displayed. It was being told that it was created by us quickly for temporary use. Then there were all these great fires. Everything's gone. And concrete melts, apparently. That's what we're led to believe. So, these premature babies were being called weaklings, by the way. And in Sanskrit, one of the roots for the word orphan exists in it as arbha. And this means weak. It means a weak child, as a matter of fact, very specifically. So once again, we find these stunning coincidences that the terms we were using in this particular country, United States, turn of the century, 20th century that is, the United States, we're calling these premature babies weaklings. And it completely directly relates to the Sanskrit origins of the word orphan. A premature baby was not considered an orphan. A premature baby was told to be useless and therefore were left to die. So we're told. This non-doctor took these premature babies and proved that it is very, very, very possible to keep them and bring them into full childhood/adulthood for whatever. These babies were not destined to die, as a matter of fact. These babies were actually... don't mind the dog and the babies. They were not destined to die. These babies were actually... I wouldn't call them healthy, but they were absolutely not to be, discarded or thrown away in a medical sense. But I think a lot of people were convinced that they should be. And as a result, maybe they weren't. Much like at birth, they're just taking placentas and doing what with them? We'll leave that for another episode. I think there were convincing parents, this baby is a weakling. It's not going to make it. Premature birth. Living baby. Suddenly, there's tons of orphans everywhere. Where were all these orphans coming from? Orphanages apparently pop up during times of war, during times of plagues and other diseases and viruses that tend to kill a lot of people. Or great fires. This even happened in the most recent Hawaiian fires that you may remember. That seems so long ago, and it was very recent, as a matter of fact. There was a lot of suspicious activity. A number of children were gone missing. The question was being asked, where are all the children? They're not documented. Where did they go? Nothing. No answers. It doesn't mean they're all dead. They're not documented. They're not accounted for. Now, why do we want this? Well, we don't want it, obviously. But why does anyone want this? What does it take to actually erase history? You have to get as many children as humanly possible. Weird way to say that, just how it came out. You have to take as many children as possible. Put them all in the same spot. Orphanages can be humongous. And I'm going to have a very unique guest on very soon who wrote a book about how she survived an orphanage in somewhere near Ukraine. I'm sorry, I forgot. I'll think of it in a second. So, incredible story, multi-hundreds orphanage. And that actually, I met this person a few months ago because she was selling a book at my local coffee shop. I said, here's a copy of my book. I'm going to see what you've got going on with yours, and maybe you can come on and talk about this because it's such a crazy topic. People don't realize there's many, 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 many thousands, if not millions of people in this entire generation from all over the world that were essentially born in an orphanage or sent right to one as soon as they were born. How do you convince many millions of families to do this? Well, this is one way to do it. Tell them premature baby, no good. We'll take it for you. Now you have a fresh start to indoctrinate. You have a fresh start to get this kid thinking whatever you'd like them to think about history and anything else you throw at them. They're already regimented in it's not a jail, but they have the schedule and the regimen of a jail in these orphanages. Wake up, breakfast time, playtime, lunchtime, dinner time, go to sleep. They have to treat it like that. It's just the way it is when you have hundreds of kids running around, obviously. But think about it. It's like a jail. It has to be run like a jail. This regimented environment is perfect for things like the Department of Education. It creates the perfect human for that kind of situation. And I think it goes a long way to make a humongous amount of people, uncountable amount of people ready to take in the new set of lies. Old bottles for new wine. And it can easily be done. Now, I had a list too, and I meant to lay it down before, where there's all these instances where orphanages were, on paper, in the narrative, orphanages were mandatory, were needed. 1832 cholera, 1906 diphtheria, 1907 typhoid, 1912 and 1918 influenza. And then, of course, we get to the spinal meningitis, which I might have an entire episode on. But look at this. You keep scouring the internet, you come up with death certificate after death certificate of these orphans. And maybe I can make it bigger for you guys so I can really show you where I'm looking at. Hold on. It's in script. It's in doctor script, so it might not be so easy, but if you look, and then right here, spinal meningitis. So, obviously it says, unknown, unknown, unknown. And then you get good old spinal meningitis and all the other things that come with it. The whole thing with COVID, that wasn't just a scare. It didn't go as planned. This was another attempt at that. They tried to make a whole new swath of orphans, in my opinion. I'm starting to believe this now. And I say believe lightly. I'm starting to think that this is a very large possibility. That it failed miserably, thankfully. It didn't necessarily backfire, which would have been great, but it failed. I think they were really trying to get another humongous, just not even an army, but just a legion, a whole world's worth of children to not know who their parents were, to be, I survived COVID, right? And then grow up in their system. Never even touch cash. Never make any transactions. Never leave home, as a matter of fact. You don't need anything. We'll do it all for you. Everything is at the touch of your fingertips. You don't even need to have more than 2 rooms and a bathroom, at the most. Livestock. I don't think it's far-fetched. I really don't. Stop procreation. Stop family. There really isn't any other way to successfully erase and rewrite history, because history has been rewritten at a very large level at this point for most. And it doesn't take much. I meant to say it doesn't take much. Food for thought here. Now, this doesn't mean that they were all just going right to school. Experiments. They could become migrants for another country. I'm sure we're all very familiar with that concept right now. I'm surprised I didn't really think of this yet. But you know what really sparked it? The Cabbage Patch thing, sure, but I was thinking about Martin Cooney, because I kind of taken this in a few days of time of information. He, as a non-doctor, saved tons of premature babies on record. This is what they say. This is how it went. This means that it was very possible to save premature babies all along. And doctors, probably all male doctors, were convincing families to get rid of them. They could have saved them. So they did. Kids everywhere. Ready to be primed for a new history. So, and by the way, it's not out of the entertainment world. Oliver Twist, Annie, which is really Little Orphan Annie. It's there. And it's not always called an orphanage. Some of you may have heard of Oddfellows. Oddfellows buildings. Oddfellow lodges. Hint, hint. Oddfellow cemeteries. Oddfellow orphanages. Or what would be called an Oddfellows home. These were not the most common things to be called, but Oddfellow lodges were masonry lodges. Because I always wondered to myself how, in the same way that a non-conspiracy theorist, and I guess I'll just label it that way since we get labels too, if a non-conspiracy theorist is always asking, how does all of NASA hide the moon landing? Right? How does all of masonry hide masonry? I think the easiest way, or at least one of the very easiest ways, would be to collect as many children as you possibly can and turn them all into masons. If you start from scratch with no idea about any other world, I think you can keep that secret pretty good. Or those secrets pretty good. If you're shown this world and nothing else, if you grow up in this Oddfellow home, born to be a Mason, maybe that's the best bet for them. Maybe this is where all these MK Ultra slaves can come from. Maybe this is where all these Disney, young child stars can come from, and all these TV stars, young kids. Did you ever wonder, are they really gone for weeks at a time and their parents are okay with this? Is it just for millions of dollars? Or maybe $1 million, depending on the time period and depending on what it is? It's really hard to say. But after having experienced the Department of Education until grade 12 and then actually going to college, which I don't necessarily recommend unless you just have a specific need for it. It's possible. I don't know. It's a very strange experience. I was always resistant to it. It's the nature of how it's done, I guess. Hey, I've got a bass player university right now. I believe in the idea of group, class, with a professional teacher, an expert. I believe in it. I think it really works. It's been completely corrupted. It's been completely altered. Its goals have been changed. The cost is, I don't even have to tell anyone here. It's crazy. But maybe this answers a few questions. Maybe it creates a ton more. Probably, right? But I'm going to look further into these Oddfellow buildings. I'm very curious about the Oddfellows versus Masons, because they are Masons, but I wonder if there is a fine line to be drawn. I wonder if there's numbers I can get, because I wasn't able to find them right away. But I'm curious, as I look to make sure I didn't miss anything in these notes here. I'm curious about how far, this is a rabbit hole. But my main points to be made here are, if you convince parents that their babies are weaklings and no good, free baby. And then they can do whatever they want with it, and its value is exponential. They can create their own little army of weaklings and turn them into Masons, or good little Masons, or they can turn them into just good little citizens who don't mind being taxed nearly half of their life. Wealth, I guess I should have put there. It's something to think about. You can't just rewrite history. It's not that simple. If everyone knew their parents and grandparents and all about everything that went on for their whole heritage and how they got here and everything, I don't think it would be so easy to rewrite history. If you get a humongous chunk of population to start from scratch with no lineage given to them, nothing handed down whatsoever, except that they one day just realized they were in an orphanage. They had no idea about their origins or anything of that. And that's why I'm very excited to have this guest on soon, probably within a month, about her experience growing up in this orphanage. It's going to be a crazy conversation, as far as I can tell. But, now she's living here and doing great. There's the other part of it. It can be okay, of course. But you and I both know that there are often quite nefarious motives behind most things that are either never questioned or at least not questioned in the proper way that gets any results. Not your typical New York Times article, which is exactly what I aim to be here. Not your typical New York Times article is my goal here at Third Eye Edify. And once again, thank you to everyone that is keeping the train rolling here. My patrons, can never thank you enough. And there's some big changes coming to Patreon, by the way. And I really think that I should tell you in the video as opposed to messaging you there. So that way anyone watching can be alerted about this. This is a PSA. I got an email, and the only thing that was kind about it is that it's not happening right away. It's happening in November. So surprisingly large amount of time being forewarned here. In November. And I'm going to try to word this as best as I can because it's a strange idea. If you use your Apple phone or potentially an Apple computer or tablet as well, if you use the Patreon app through your Apple device, If that's where you set up your Patreon pay for whoever you support there, including myself, obviously, Apple will immediately, upon each payment, take 30% of that payment for themselves because you're using the app through the App Store. This is an App Store agreement, apparently. Super high number. Crazy. I said, so you can either change your tier list pricing now, which you really actually can't do. If people are in a tier list, you can't change that price. You have to create a new tier list price, which I obviously will not be doing. I'm just letting you know ahead of time that it's crazy. I personally will continue to absolutely not worry about how any of you do any Patreon payments. 50 cents is a freaking gift and an appreciation that I appreciate very much. But it's getting me to want to get off of all platforms, or at least not put my paid stuff anywhere except my own personal website subscription. I am gearing to do that pretty soon. Because if Apple is willing to take 30%, there's a small amount that comes out from Patreon when you pay, for Third Eye Edify, let's say. Patreon takes a surprisingly small percentage, and I actually get all the rest. I almost get, 90% of what I get like 80-ish% of what you put into Patreon for my channel. I get about 80%. 80-20 is a very fair deal for most business relationships. So it's great. I don't have the reach or the abilities of Patreon to take payments and stuff, but I'm going to do something like, what Crow does, where you have a 6 month or a 1 year, and then it can be cheaper as a result because I'm not dealing with any fees. So I'm going to keep everyone posted as this occurs, because this is not tomorrow and it's not next month. My wife is having a baby very soon, and I'm not worrying about that right now. But November is when this starts. So maybe early next year. And obviously I'll be talking about it, and we'll keep up to date on it right here on the channel. But thank you. The other part of that announcement is how little I want to use Google at all anymore. And I may have another guest coming on to discuss exactly that, de-Googling, which is the final frontier in my opinion. But I'm not going to be putting too much on YouTube anymore, because I'm worried. That's it. I'm worried. YouTube is a bad place to post things that sound alarms, much like this episode. So I might put little bumpers, little teasers of the episode and stuff, but I don't really think I'm doing much with YouTube. There's a chat there. There could be a chat on Rockfin as well. And Patreon. And Rumble. I don't know if I trust Rumble. I think BlackRock has a large percentage in them. Something to think about. At least Rockfin seems privately owned. But no matter what, nothing's better for the growth of a channel like this than to have my own personal subscription. So I am starting to look at that right now. And I once again apologize for the long hiatus. It was unavoidable in many ways, as a matter of fact. But avoid a gap that long again, I shall. And we're back on track with an episode like this, and plenty more where that came from, of course. Expect my wife Petra back on, maybe this very next episode. And we're going to have a very interesting topic that I think you're all going to love. And then I'm going to have some brand new guests. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed. And I look forward to seeing you guys next time.